Okay, so good morning, everyone. Once again, I would like to greet those who are here with us and also the ones that are participating in the session through UTAD's YouTube channel. As you might have seen in the program, this session will be taking place in English. I would like to start by introducing the first speaker, who is Tatiana Chervyakova. She's one of the members of MeDeMAP's research team. Tatiana, she is a PhD student, almost in her final stage in communication sciences at U.Lusofona University in Lisbon. And she will tell us a bit more about the work that has been conducted during the 3 years of the MeDeMAP project. And she will tell us about specific results from Portugal. So thank you, Tatiana.
Thank you, Anna. And I hope that I can do like this. Yeah, I hope online you can hear me well. Hello everyone, sorry for this drastic language switch, but I'm not good in Portuguese, and so yeah. But hello everyone, thank you for being here, and we'd like to share the results of the MeDeMAP project with you today, and to share what we were doing for all these 3 years. We and our team from U.Lusofona University. So MeDeMAP is the project dedicated to researching and exploring the conditions for successful performance of democratic media, especially with the focus on how media can actually enhance and promote participation. What is participation was a huge question in the frame of this research project. So basically, we were trying to map and to analyze all the conditions for successful media performance. We were doing it in a great team led by Austrian Academy of Science, and with overall 10 countries around European Union participating in the research. So also that project has quite a structure, and U.Lusofona actually was leading a dissemination work package, but our presentation today would be focused on 3 work packages dedicated to this triangle of legislation, supply side, and demand side of media production. So what are actually what we found in Portugal specifically? I would start with legal and self-regulatory framework, and to say something about our sample. So the idea of the whole, so each country member of consortium, we had shared the same protocol, so we had to follow the same procedure, and the idea to research the legal framework was to combine literature review with semi-structured interview, which were also broke down to different perspectives. So we had to interview regulators, self-regulation organizations, and bottom-up organizations. So we've done our interviews with keeping this perspective in mind. And so what do we have? I would share with you the most outstanding moments, I would say, and one of this is this concept of catch-all pluralism that happened in Portugal. That pluralism is recognized and established in laws, and this is really important element of Portuguese media legislation, where it is not allowed for political powers to own audiovisual media. And so it can happen in press or in digital because of this confusion of the digital law that I will say later. And this catch-all strategy, where media outlets, because of the size of the market, they don't want to deprive themselves from some audience because of their political views, so they need to be pluralist. That was highlighted by the experts. However, commentators, that was a kind of a red line around all work packages about the commentators, that they are the one posing these risks for impartiality and the perception of impartiality of the media outlets. they are kind of promote. So it seems that they can damage somehow this perception and this balance of political views represented in one media outlets. And so I believe it is important to notice that there were some elements by some participants mentioning SLAP's strategic lawsuits, again, public participation incidents. However, they are not systematic, but personally believe that acknowledging them in the early stage, it's really important to for the conversation of for successful performance of the media. The second thing regarding legislation in Portugal, which is not the same in other countries of the consortium, is the high professionalization. So the journalists are really highly regulated profession in Portugal. It is not the case everywhere, so you are not allowed to perform journalistic function without specific license. And there is not the term in our protocol. We had the question regarding citizen journalists, and this is not a term that used in Portugal. And we were curious to see how is it perceived? Is it seen as a boundary, or is it seen like a way to have a threshold to enter the profession? However, among this sample that we asked about considering legislation, there was some sort of consensus that this license is a proof of qualification and legal accountability. So this is kind of a guarantee of their professional in front of the audience. So they are really acknowledge this as a really good mechanism to maintain trust, for the audience. So summing up, actually the shared narrative among all our participants was the legislation is appropriate and really advanced. However, enforcement of this is pretty weak. So Portugal is ranked really high in different indexes in freedom of press, and has low risks of political interference, and it's like a lot is required from the journalists, from the legal perspective. So there's a transparency law. There is a so this factor is visible in the legislation. However, the most confusing part about this is the lack of any regulation of digital media, which is now a subject for the press law from 1999, which creates some sort of disbalance to the industry. So yeah, we do discuss it a lot with our participants. So going to supply side. By supply side, we mean we were talking with the media professionals, with journalists. So I would try to quickly go through the sample. So we had to conduct a semi-structured interview with managers and with journalists. So we combined these two perspectives, and with each media sector. So you can see on the screen. Plus, this work package also considered quantitative survey. We disseminated this survey among a lot of journalists. We used the network of Journalistic Union and Carteira Profissional. So, but we got 89 responses. Plus, we also made a big quantitative sample of all the media outlets that were broke down by different characteristics to find and then compare the results with different countries. So, but talking of results, mostly of the interviews. So most of the journalists, they see the problem. With the sector, specifically inside this financial crisis. So this is a vicious circle that creates like interdependencies between the problem: lack of resources, creates lack of professional, lack of quality investigative journalism, increased speed. It also, so it influences the quality, it influences the mental health of journalists, it influences the fact that experienced staff leave the profession, with less journalists entering and having experienced mentors inside the profession. So these fragile business models, they really hinder the development of qualitative investigation in the country. So and also because of the technology, some journalists would say that at some point this is really important for us because we simply have a lot of tools and our work can be easier now because we have internet, obviously. But they are concerned with the way that their business model is disrupted because of their free flow in the information and the way that they cannot keep this gate to the audience themselves anymore. And also really visible among the sample of journalists that we were talking with, the absence of political pressure. It doesn't mean that this is a phony word for sure, but the absence in a way that that was not the first concern of the journalists in Portugal. So some would say that there's this quote that we do our journalism in peace here. The political pressure was not the first problem that they noticed. However, they do notice the risk of polarization and how their work actually can contribute to this polarization. Also raising the issue of commentators, that this is the vicious circle. So in order to create 24/7 all around the clock content, you need to invite commentators to spend some time on air, and they are presenting different political views. That so as a cheaper content to produce. So these elements can contribute to growing polarization. And we were discussing. So the journalists. There was a shared narrative of journalism being left behind from the optics of the government, that they believe that some sort of attention, some sort of program, some sort of support should be, some sort of attention should be given to the journalism. Some words about promotion, the role of journalism in promotion of political participation. So we've conducted this quantitative survey, and what we can see from this is that there is not that common practice to have a direct contact with the audience. Just over the quarter of respondents said that they sometimes do debates with representative of their audience to understand their needs and to understand their visions. But it's really limited due to also financial and time resources noted by Portuguese media workers. And you can see from this graph that so it's almost the biggest majority is that public participation in media production is pretty rare. So the audience is not taking part in creating journalistic production, which can be related to the fact that journalists in Portugal do take accountability and responsibility for the production to themselves. So talking about demand side, so to explore the visions of Portuguese media audience, we've conducted 4 focus groups with overall 37 participants that were divided by high and low political interest and by the age. They all took place in Lisbon. And also we had 10 semi-structured interviews with Portuguese people, or we also had, there was one, we tried to do inclusive sample, tried to include some vulnerable groups, so we made an emphasis on this. And some results, so obviously, not obviously, sorry, we noticed really obvious skepticism of their audience regarding media performance. And this skepticism and suspicion is really widespread, and it really determines the way audience consume media. So this suspicion creates some sort of new media behavioral practices. So we heard different type of tactics, how they compare, search, cross-referencing different sources and different information, how then they can come to their final conclusion to believe or not to believe. And also talking of digital influence, algorithms actually, when they were prone to be to make their life easier because we can see everything that we like to see, however, that created the demand for unpersonalized space. This created some sort of demand to see what I can't see. So among our participants, we noticed this demand to break down these bubbles and these chambers and to find something that was not maybe made for them to see. And this criticism actually went over media performance. The audience see the they have strong opinions on the journalist practices. So journalists are really frequently accused on lack of independence because of their financial dependence on their employee and some personal bias. Their advertising supported and profit-oriented model is seen with skepticism because it seems that content published is being published not for the sake of public interest but for the sake of earning money. So it's and this dependence on profit is jeopardizing trust to its independence and trust to the media. And what is important also, I think, for this event is the vision of political debates. So this is to say that political debates are not always seen as the most useful instrument to discuss different perspectives. Some participants would say that those are specifically curated content to increase ratings. They sometimes do not bring any substance and not a deep understanding to participants, and are really associated with conflict, not with the resolution of this conflict. And instead of conclusions, actually all these 3 years maybe kind of combine in this diagram. So we found that in many aspects, the media professionals, audiences, they do have polar views on their state of art, because those are 3 zones where it was noticed the most. So for instance, this dissonance, so we found these 3 zones as dissonance and one, the good news, of confluence. The first one is really visible, this earning motivation and precarity of journalists, while audience would see the profit orientation of the media outlets and the flaws of their earning logic of the media outlets. journalists would always highlight the precarity and the financial crisis inside their media organizations. Intentional conflicts versus opposing opinions. So where the audience would say some staged conflict and some scandal inside the content to create ratings. The journalists would say that those are provision of a platform, practice of pluralism. So this view on pluralism can be also different and dissonating. And the last one is the dissonance on lack of quality versus high accountability. Journalists are criticized for lack of professionalism. However, as we were demonstrating, journalism in Portugal is a highly regulated profession, so they had to comply with a lot of rules. And so we haven't researched this, but not aware whether audience is aware of this highly regulated journalistic field. But so those are zones where we believe that there should be the dialogue between these two spectrums to listen to each other. However, there is one zone of confluence where we found that everybody wants to live in democracy, and everybody believes that media should support democracy. So this is at least the goal. The goal is common, is shared between all between supply and demand side. So hopefully with projects like with such events, we can come up with some great ideas. Thank you. And there is also a lot of different deliverables that we have. They are more comparative between different countries. So if you would be interested, there is a link for the MeDeMAP website. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think we are going to do a change in seats so that João and Francisco can sit closer to the monitor. You can sit there. Okay. So after the presentation of some of MeDeMAP's national results, we will have the presentation by João Baptista and Francisco Conrado. João is the PI of the project aPEaSE, Tracking the Fact Checkers, an exploratory national project that is funded by our national agency, FCT. And Francisco is the doctoral, research fellow, exactly. So, very interested in listening to some of your first results.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is João Pedro Baptista, and I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Trás-os-Montes and Alto Douro. We will present checking the fact checkers practices and effectiveness in Southern Europe. Our team is a multidisciplinary team from several universities and from other countries. Fábio Ribeiro, professor at the University of Trás-os-Montes and Alto Douro. Anabela Gradim, my former supervisor from the University of Trás-os-Montes, University of Beira Interior. Daniela Fonseca, professor at the University of Trás-os-Montes and Alto Douro. Concha Pérez Curiel, she is a Spanish professor from the University of Sevilla, with Ruben Rivas de Roca, another researcher from Spain, from the University of Santiago de Compostela. Pedro Costa, professor at the University of U.Lusofona. Florence Oliveira, she is a PhD student. She is studying the fact-checking in your thesis. And Francisco Conrado, our research fellow. So, this is our main questions from our research. Is fact-checking effective? Which factors influence our beliefs? Does political orientation influence the correction or false beliefs? This is our research problem. First of all, fact-checking is widely promoted, but it also faces criticism and real limits. We have, the literature pointed several limitations to the practices and the effect of fact-checking. For example, the acceptance of facts depends on the ideological beliefs and political values of the audience. We have also several criticisms for the domain of the way of selection of topics from the fact-checkers, limitations about the effectiveness in correcting misinformation, and distrust and skepticism toward fact-checkers. Another point about regard the reach and consumption, we have low public engagement with fact-checking content, weak circulation on social media, and among young people, the majority have never accessed fact-checking websites. So, we have to our project 4 structural axes: profession, perception and attitude, effectiveness, and agenda setting. Related profession, we try to analyze the practice of fact-checking, how fact-checkers analyze their routine in a newsroom. About the perception, the public's perception and attitude toward fact-checking, understanding their level of familiarity with the practices as well as their news consumption habits. Also, we are exploring the challenge posed by algorithms in filter bubbles and partisan echo chambers. And another axe, how fact-checking influence different political and media agenda. So this is our main points. Our objectives. First of all, the overall goal of this project is to deepen the study of fact-checking practices, analyzing journalistic process, their acceptance and perception by different audiences, their relationship with the dynamics of social networks or social media, and their effectiveness in correcting false information. First, identify and analyze fact-checking strategies and practices. Second, to assess the ability of fact-checking to track the circulation of misinformation online. Then, understanding audience attitudes and perception regarding fact-checking practices. And to investigate the relationship between political party affiliation and the consumption and sharing of fact-checking articles. To assess how political bias influence the effectiveness of fact-checking, to analyze the ability of fact-checking to reach engaged users in political and hyper-partisan echo chambers, and finally to analyze how fact-checking influence the political and media agenda. We regard the profession. We show some methodology that we are applying. We apply semi-structured interview with the fact-checking journalists in 3 countries. In Portugal with Polígrafo, in Spain with Maldita, and Italia with Pagella Politica. Then you also have a non-participate observation. We already did one of them with Pagella Politica in Italy, and we will do also a non-participation observation with Público, with a section of the newspaper pointed to fact-checking. About perception and attitude, we're applying several experimental surveys in 3 countries, Portugal, Spain, and Italy again. We have some results about these surveys. Regarding the effectiveness, this is our main axe of our project. We will apply one focus group per country, we'll try, with 2 sessions each, and also we have an experiment on social media in some of echo chambers on Facebook or Reddit to try to understand the effect of fact-checking. In agenda setting, we create an AI model to develop or to extract that data related to national politics in each country from social network X, accounts of major parties and politicians, data from national newspaper accounts, and data from fact-checking accounts in each country. We try to understand how fact-checking are covering all the media agenda. This is our tasks. First, literature review, semi-structured interview, non-participation observation, surveys, also collecting misinformation items to use on focus group sessions, political party groups, and a model of agenda setting. So I will pass to Francisco.
Thank you. Now I'm going to focus a little bit more on some of the results and outputs of the project. Although so far it's an ongoing project, so we don't have many yet definitive answers to some of the questions that we posed, but these are some of a few ones that we can already be certain of as soon as we start this research. As was mentioned before, we started with a literature review, and this literature review actually ended up being, turned out to be 3 different objects. One focused especially on the fact that how fact-checking is researched across different countries, and mainly in Europe, but also most of the literature comes from North American researchers, so that's also a limitation and also a gap that it's important to fulfill, because the European side of this argument needs to also be heard and be understood, and though we have a perception of how it works, especially in English-speaking words. So the first one was called The Shadows and Light of Fact-Checking. Actually, we utilized the Prisma overview of this whole of the papers that we analyzed. We start with a sample of 228 papers, ended up being with 108, divided in 3 different countries. Since we are focusing on, remember that we are focused on the Southern Europe, so Portugal, Italy, and Spain. So that's the reason why we focus on papers written in Italy, Spain, and Portuguese. Since we have this cross-national team, we could easily able to read these papers, although we would be quite hard for everyone to be able to read every different language. So we have like this access, since we have the team that can speak fluently, natively, each of those languages. So we start with this literature review, and also the literature review ended up being focused one specifically on the effectiveness. So basically we decided to start, after seeing what the main study was in the Southern Europe, we started to understand if the fact-checking was really effective. If there was some answers, or there was some studies prior to the ones that we are conducting now, that shows, and they can point for a clear answer about if fact-checking can be
at least a useful tool to debunk some of the myths or debunk some misinformation that happened online. And also we notice a small gap about people mentioning about new tools and AI and trying to use this to accelerate the process of fact-checking. So that's also turned out to be one of our investigations. So now I'm going to explain a little bit more about the results that we found in these three literature, more abstract part of our work that's not focused especially on the empirical data. So basically, as I mentioned before, when we start to see and look at the production of research on the topic, we noticed that our Spanish colleagues were more proficient than us. They are responsible for approximately three-fourths of the whole production of fact-checking, and this accounts a lot that says that they have more interest, they have also the more focus, but also it says a lot about the silence that we can see about the Portugal and the Italy side and what that represents, and these gaps also, it's one of the reasons why we are trying to aim and focus on that. Also, another thing that is important to mention is that almost 27% of the papers that was produced about fact-checking in Southern Europe mostly was focusing on analyzing the practices that was developed in the newsrooms. And only 23% about how disinformation as a problem. So also most of the works is trying to see how they operate in the field and how they try to evaluate and select the points they're going to talk. And also we are going to notice that when we start our first empirical data, one of the partners that we chose to work with, the Pagella Politica, was also one of the things that we noticed they were most focused about how they operate and how to say that they try to have a clear operation process, a very transparent process, but there are some things that also stays hidden, and that's the reason why sometimes it arises some distrust from the public because they cannot see the whole process happen in real time. So as our second output, also still focusing on the literature review, we talked about the effectiveness of fact-checking. So basically we start from 2010 to 2025, and we notice in 148 reviews that we don't have an established answer to say it's effective, does fact-checking, it does work? And the answer is yes, with an asterisk. So what is the asterisk? Basically it says that a lot of people has skepticism, and also they have some misconceptions about how the journalist practice works. And as we just noticed on the previous work, some people has this distrust, but specifically in this case, what we notice is this. There was an effect called the backfire effect. The backfire effect mainly says that actually the fact-checking doesn't trigger in the opposite direction of what they're trying to do. People are seeing they're being corrected, and then they decide to realize, okay, so I don't believe that because journalists are biased. But that was an idea that people before the beginning of the fact-checking research, they thought this was the main idea. So it was not worth investing much time in this. But as the time passed and the evolution of fact-checking, since we're just looking from 2010 to 2025, it's changed a little bit, and we realized that, okay, it doesn't triggers backfire a lot, but happens something very different, that it is related with the fact that it works, but it's very limited and short-lived. And how does it get limited? It got limited by the partisanship, the ideology of the reader, the partisan belief that they have. Also, media literacy, it's very important. Most of the people don't understand how a news is produced. So since they don't know how they are produced, they also have skepticisms about how they can understand and what we are reading, the output, the final output of this. And also I would like to point out that there is a trust in media in general if the overall feeling it's not very trusted, especially in the times that we are running right now. We know there's a lot of distrust towards media in general. It also is kind of ended up reflecting on this. The third output that we mentioned, we are talking about the idea that the AI, and the AI, when we are talking about this, it's mostly about how fact checkers, the journalists working on this, have problems and try to understand how to utilize this as a tool, a useful tool, but also how it can be detrimental to our end project. So, for example, what we noticed is they realized that the AI could be a very good leverage to try to make things more fast. Since we're talking about, I think in the introduction of this whole point, we're talking about the liquid times, about how things are very fast. And the journalists realize, especially fact checkers, and also the people who are responsible for producing misinformation in a way, knows that since we are fast, journalists are not able to come up with answers to everything that we put out. And that's one of the reasons why also the journalist needs to improve the efficiency. And we are talking about efficiency in a very subject way, because it's kind of hard to impose this when we have very smaller newsroom that are trying to tackle these problems. So it's important to point that out. So AI, it's a point of controversy, but also a point of they try to how to reliably extract some things from that. So then we start our empirical research after that, and our first newsroom that we focus on was Pagella Politica. It's an Italian fact-checker news agency that now decided to branch out and to become a newspaper overall, not only a fact-checker. And Pagella Politica, we have like an unprecedented access to their Slack. Basically, they work with Slack, and most of you probably knows how Slack works. So basically, we have this, what we call a newsroom in the cloud, and we have this access to the 90 days of conversation that happened in Slack. So we have special roughly 7,000 messages that were exchanged about how they process the work. So basically I'm digging in this data right now, so we don't have much of that information yet. A correction is not 62 days, it's 90 days. But so what are the main things that we could understand right now? The first thing that we can say is they try to not have an established hierarchy of how news are developed. So they try to distribute the whole process throughout all the journalism. And the only point that we notice when we have a kind of traditional hierarchy of someone pointing out the direction is when they decide which topic, which subject is going to be analyzed next. And this is very important because when we start analyzing the data, we thought that we would be able to see the discussing what was going to be the next topic, but this is never discussed in Slack conversations. This happened off screens and in direct messages between them. So we cannot have a reliable access to that. We only have what they said in the interviews, what we could infer based on the conversations that happened during the Slack, and also based in the whole interview that we have with the whole newsroom that we're able to say, and then we cross that interview with what the editor said to see if they were like in sync about the purpose and objectives. So yeah, that was one of the things. So we're still analyzing all the data. There's a lot of methods to read, and that's one of the things that we're trying to still finish. The second thing is it's about a survey that was basically created with the idea of understanding how students, Portuguese students especially, face or understand or accept or not fact-checking. And it's funny because the first thing that we can say is this, and the main output of this the whole process was this. They do have like a normative support. They do believe the fact-checking is important, but they don't consume it. They just think, I know it's important, I know it's there, but I don't feel compelled to interact with it in social media. I don't feel compelled to read it directly. So basically they know the whole idea that we know that we have to eat vegetables, but I will stick with my red meat because it's what I want, it's what I'm used to. So that's the fun thing. So they know that, especially in Portugal, because actually, as you can see, we did the same survey now on a cross-national level, and not only with students, not only with youth, and we got kind of similar vibes in Portuguese people were the respondents that said that they have the most trust in media, the most trust in fact checkers across Europe, but the ones that they tend to consume less because they think, yeah, I trust. So we have this whole idea that I think it's important, I know it's there, but it's not for me. It's very interesting. So we try still to find, explore that output a little bit more. So also in analyzing the data with this cross-national survey that we also had with 900 respondents, 300 per country, we also noticed something that we can say that it's the trust that they have sometimes drops after they read the fact checkers. So they start to believe in it, and since they see that the correction is happening with one of the parties that they believe, one of the persons that they support, and now they think, okay, see, if they are saying something negative about something that I believe, now I don't believe them, which is kind of weird because sometimes we are not open to understand and open to maybe to be correct ourselves because we have very strong belief about what it could be right or not. Lastly, we did empirical research, and this was more specifically focused on climate change or climate change misinformation that exists online. So basically, what we did was this: we looked at Polygraph and MeDeMAP, and we basically extracted every bit of news that they produced in relation to climate change. So we used some keywords to extract the news. We did an automated process to extract this, and then during this whole analysis, we ended up with an output with Polygraph only had like 27 news in a span of 5 years about climate change, and MeDeMAP had 277. So only you're looking for this, we notice there's a huge gap between the production and obviously maybe interest in these two different counterparts of fact checkers. So after that, we developed a machine learning model that could develop two kinds of analysis, different analysis. The first one, we used a topic modeling. So basically, since we had a lot of news to read and a lot of information to produce, we decided to do a topic modeling, basically to try to understand what topics were the most common in each different news. Pay attention to this, that when we're talking about different topics, not every news only has one topic, and sometimes there is an overlap of different topics in the same news, so it's not like a sum zero that we have. So basically we apply this to realize and detect what they were discussing. Fun fact is this: Polygraph were mainly focused about explainers, and MeDeMAP was mainly focused about actually debunking fake news. So it's interesting to see how they have completely different approach for this. The second analysis that we run, we call this, in machine learning, we call this a named entity recognition. So basically we apply the process that we could understand what are the names of the peoples, institutions, organizations, and countries that were mentioned in this news. And then based on that, we could understand if they are focused in which actors and what we can infer based on this kind of information. And then on Polygraph, we noticed that they have mainly institutionalized the sources. So basically, there's only cited international institutionalized sources like European or sometimes some North American agencies, but that's the main point of the whole thing. And the MeDeMAP tried to do a different approach. So they are more localized, more worried about local regions in Spain, but they also personalized a lot of the discuss and the findings. So basically they were mentioned, for example, I mentioned that they have a lot of personalization, and Greta Thunberg and Donald Trump, for example, two of the main characters cited a lot in a lot of news published by MeDeMAP. Pay attention to that Polygraph would basically mention using the explainer as a way of convey this information, and MeDeMAP was actually trying to debunk something that the people were saying. So that's the reason why also we see a personalization on one side and an institutionalization on the other side. So as one of the major, the first thing that we tried to do was combine and collect all this information in this first report that João and we also tried to develop. And this report mainly summarized some of these findings already, and some of them could also helped us in a way to try to understand what could be the next step, the logical next step to try to get further on and try to explain based on that. Also, we took part in a few communications that we can see here. So basically all of them intermediate results of everything that I mentioned that so far, some with different perspectives. And now that I say that, I welcome all questions that you may have. Thank you for your attention.
So thank you all, João, Francisco, Tatiana, for your presentations and the insights that you brought from these two projects. I think we have more or less 10 minutes until we end this first session of the day. So I would like to invite the audience to share some thoughts, some questions, some ideas that you might have that come from these presentations. So does anyone have any question, comment? I have. I have, and it's something that relates more or less to one of my main fields of work, and also Marisa's. So we are concerned with media literacy. What is the role of media literacy on all of this? And the two projects, they look at journalists, but they also look at the audiences, okay? And when we talk about the audiences, we know that, at least in Portugal, there is a ongoing debate on how media literacy is taught, how it reaches people, how people learn about how media works, how journalism works, and all that. But we also have the question with the people that are training to become journalists, and ongoing training in this field for journalists. You conducted some interviews with journalists, and you also have been observing and talking with journalists in this field. Did this topic of media literacy and media literacy training and needs within the professional, within the profession of journalists come up in any of these, the research that you have been conducting?
I think, especially when we talk with Pagella Politica and Maldita, that's the one that we conduct interviews so far, we notice that they are aware that media literacy is a very important factor for them to be more accepted in a general way. But also they feel that this is something that is out of their hands in a way, so they try to focus, especially I noticed that since they realize that this is a situation that we cannot solve ourselves, so we can rely on other institutions and other ways. For example, they also talk a lot about the idea that the public needs to be needs to be responsible about how they consume things, but also they realize that we cannot be the ones doing that, because if we are the ones who try to share and try to establish what is the fact or the information that we are talking, we cannot be the one patronized and say, so you need to do it like this, otherwise it's going to kind of be a counterpoint for them. So that's the reason why they are very aware of this, but also they try not to be very imposed on this side, and they try to rely mainly, for example, that's the reason why they are also open for research projects like us. For them, it's like the opportunity that they have. So we are talking what we need, but you need to be our mouthpiece. You need to be the one saying, okay, see what we do, see what we are trying to accomplish, but we cannot do this ourselves, otherwise it could be having a negative effect on them. So that's the main outtake that we can take from these interviews that we conducted so far.
Thank you.
Sure. We, as I showed in one slide, that that was a great metaphor about everybody understood that they need to eat vegetables, but everybody understood that they need to check everything. They need to be really skeptical in a good way, that not to take everything for granted in a good way. Actually, this skepticism that we noticed, that can be discussed even as one of a good thing, because yes, it promotes a muscle to go and to look for information, to learn how to navigate in this really complex, multi-layered digital world. However, I think this is like the relation toward media literacy. It comes from like personal values, actually, because it depends on what do you want to see, what do you want to find, but everybody, I believe that from both journalists and audience, they want to see each other somewhere in the middle. So they want to, journalists want to produce something that would be the most of views and the most convenient and the most comprehensible for audience, and the audience wants to see this. So this is still work in progress, and I think that one of the theoretical embedding for the MeDeMAP is that like democracy should be constantly practiced. So it should be always in. It is always in development. So. And this is kind of for media literacy, there is no end to reach, like, now we are all media literate. No, it's always with new challenges, it's always training process, so yeah.
Yes, João.
The problem when we are talking about the fact-checking consumption is the human nature, not the journalists or the fact-checkers, but the way that we consume information. We use bias in all of information that you have. So this is our problem, how literacy can fight this kind of psychological feature. This is, for example, we have algorithms as gatekeepers. We have people on social media that all see information that combine with your beliefs, and this is the problem of misinformation or disinformation on the fact checkers. I guess it's difficult. Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
So I have also a question. Okay, so fact checkers are the one checking, and we are to trust that they check with the exemption, but do they really track information and check information? Because a lot of authors already also have studies that proves that the link between the fact checkers with some political parties, with some governments, some legal restraints in some of the European countries, very specific ones that you probably know and also thought about those. And also even the links with Meta and the way they receive money, and sometimes it's more profitable not to check political facts because Meta does not pay political facts. So when I think, and my background is from political science, and when I think, well, fact checkers would be great to help us not corrupt the idea and the main conception of democracy, but with all of this, are fact checkers really contributing to not disrupt democracy, or are they also part of the problem? Because in a way, they are very, in some countries in particular, they are very restrained in several ways to do the checking on the aspects that I believe are the foundation of the democratic systems. So I would like to know if that aroused in some of the interviews. And also a second question is, was it easy to have people from the fact checkers interviewed by you, or did you select these specific countries because in fact there are still some openness that permits them to do it? Because I know from other projects and also personal interests that some fact checkers don't even want to be referred because the simple mention of the country, since they are the only fact checker, will put them in a very not comfortable position. So I would like to also understand if you had that perception. So the things that are not quantitative, but you feel when you are interviewing these people. So
this is our concern.
Yeah.
Because we don't have all the information the way that fact checkers select topics, select false claims, and this is why we apply the observation on their newsrooms to check the fact checkers. How, for example, why this politician will be checked and another no. This is a dark way, because in the websites, in all the information about fact checkers, we don't have this kind of information. Yeah.
Okay, so first I would like to establish that two different perspectives when we're talking about fact checkers. First of all, is fact checking inside the social media platform, and fact checking operated outside the sphere, okay? So when we're talking about inside social media platform, yes, we have a lot of concerns because they operate in, he said dark way, but I think the best way to approach it is black box, okay? So we don't know exactly how they come up with these outputs. And especially when we know that they have different mandates on how to approach this, and X and Facebook, they have their own teams doing this. So yeah, we don't have access to this, so we can be skeptical of that. But that's one side of the fact checking operations. And the other operation levels happens with newsrooms. They are financially independent, example Pagella. So that's the reason why we start to focus on three different ones that they don't have any reliance on any political major party helping them to support them, and they mostly work with European funds. So one of the aspects that we try to do this, and so let's look one of the fact checkers that could be considered more accountable in a way, and see how they work like this. And as I mentioned before, I could not see in 90 days of observation how they could select the topics. And I understand that for one side, one aspect of things, they could not help us, they could not allow us to read or take part in personal exchange of conversation. That's what happened most of the time. But also, I feel like that is one of the aspects that we notice when we interview also distributing the survey. I think this reflects directly on why they have very concerned about this is this. Most of the people who think or look at fact checkers have this idea that they are kind of lean to the left. And this is something that most of the respondents sometimes said, that they have this idea that, okay, they're kind of leaning to the left, but it's also another concern because people think this, they are leaning towards one side of the political spectrum when they see they are correcting based on the political party that has been the aim of the object. For example, we notice that if you see information that people think that, okay, this is correcting this party, this focusing on this party specifically, and it's saying that it's true or saying it's false. If it's true, okay, it's in favor of that party. If it's against, it's saying that it's false. So probably they against it, they are lean, or they are left, or they are right. So that is also problem is, I think, goes back all the way to when we're talking about the media literacy. We have to understand sometimes we can say positive things about one aspect or negative things about others without being biased or at least leaning toward one side of the spectrum. For example, recently I was talking with a journalist from Espresso, and she was in charge of writing the Chega report news about the Chega and the results of the last presidential election. And all the comments say, "Oh, she works for Chega. Why is she saying they're rising? Why does she say that they have more voters now? Why do they say that they have some kind of a Pyrrhic victory in a way?" And only thing that she said was say they have higher numbers now, higher percentage now. She didn't say any qualification about if it's a positive or negative things. But the main idea was, no, she is from the right. And the same person who wrote this piece also wrote another piece about how was the election from from all the other left parties, and they say, oh, she's probably not trying to help us at all. So that's the problem. When you're trying to deal with, sometimes fact checkers have to fumble their way through because they have to be very careful about how people perceive what they are talking, and so I think that's the reason why they are sometimes very skeptical, or also very worried that they can, maybe it's hard for us to disclose all the whole process. So that's the reason why I don't think Pagella, at least we didn't have this idea, this process of peeking through this behind the curtain part of it, but maybe we can see now we are going to do the same thing in Publico, I don't know, but yes, I understand your point.
No, but can I just make a comment? And I don't want to enter in a discussion, but, and okay, you're coming from political, from communication sciences, I came from political science, maybe that's different ways to get there, but when you say, well, but they are independent because they are not linked to a political party, but they are owned by economic groups, because there's no exemption anywhere anymore, and I think it's really, and that is something that has to be said. I mean, in a way or the other, everything is connected, and if you try to map the links between major economic groups and their connections with media corporations in America and through Portugal, you will find economic links. So, and I completely understand what you are saying. I think the example of Express, it's also well connected with the foundation, and traditionally right-wing newspaper. Maybe in Portugal, what we need is that papers take a step like in America, where you clearly know where are their political positions, or they take a position that they don't have it, or they have from both sides, which is okay and great. So I don't want to create, and I'm not that cynic, so I do think that fact checkers do a good job and they are trying to help. What I think there's a lot of constraints that comes from the political side and the economic side and the social side. So, but I was not taking it as, well, they are the bad guys, or nothing like that. And I really think that fact checkers are, with the open access that we have to internet, without the traditional gatekeeping that journalists were able to do, because the news comes out and immediately you have it all over. So the only things that still give us some certainty that, okay, this might be really a fact, that it was checked properly and with exemption, but still I feel strange, and I don't feel comfortable saying that, well, some of them are completely exempt, because there's always limitations. But that, I don't think.
I understand. I would just like to add one small note. It's
But
more of a personal note about. It's not something that we are researching to. It's about a conversation that I have with some journalists, and it's a fun thing. But we have this whole perception, especially in Portugal, since they are not clearly identified with what side of the political spectrum they rely on, and actually, there is a very funny misconception that I noticed when talking with journalists. For example, in Publico, when I talk with journalists who works in Publico, and I know a few of them that we're talking to, and when we talk the perception of what Publico what the audience think the Publico leans on politically, and the people we usually tend to say, and sometimes they receive this kind of emails complaining, "Oh, you're so to the lane, so you're to the left, you're very leftist." Yes, exactly. Some people, they receive this kind of email from the audience, and the journalists working there, they say, oh, definitely, I do not feel I'm working for the left. And sometimes some of them are from the left, and they just feel like, I feel I'm working to help to promote the idea of the right, and that's a funny idea. But also talking about ties to major organization, it's a Sonai group, right? So what we can expect, I understand that. So yeah, that's the reason why I was just saying this.
The problem is the politics isn't factual.
Yeah.
So when we start to verify politics, it's difficult because the politics needs another thinking, not only the numbers.
Yeah.
And
It's
this
a
is
collective,
different because when we have a fact checkers about the television debates or something, it's difficult to verify some information because their politicians have a discourse, a political discourse, not only a factual discourse. This is different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Tatiana wanted to add something.
I want
I
to,
don't know
because actually that's what we got from our audience and from actually both from legislators, from journalists, and from audience that there is this politicians, a lot of intrusion of politicians speaking, and it can be perceived as journalistic content while it's not. And again, it connected with filling the air, and then in order to save some budgets, but it ended up influencing and creating an image of the media of the media being left, right, or somewhere else. Actually, I wanted to ask about, so you mentioned that Polygraphy is using only administrative sources to institutionalized sources to check the information, and Spanish fact-checking source, they do not. They can
Information about climate change.
Climate change,
Okay.
yes, climate change, and no, they use it. I'm just saying the higher percentage was more institutionalized source on the political side than on the Maldita side. That's the difference. Both of them use institutionalized source, like European agencies and organizations like that.
Question. Yeah, that's my question. How did they justify it? Because, for instance, maybe this is because of my personal background. I'm from the country where exactly you do not trust what is in. It's not to say that I'm like don't trust anything, but if it would be the institutionalized information, I would rather do not trust it. And so it's for sure now. Like we live, my example is a bit on extreme. But how do they justify the selection of these institutionalized sources? How do they think that those are the only? We can try to theorize about that, but Yeah, sure.
we didn't look into that. So basically, we can notice that mostly when they're trying to use institutionalized sources, when they're trying to come out with some official data. So sometimes they need official data. Sometimes they need official data, and the only reliable way that they could access that is if they use an institutionalized source. So that's the reason why most of the time Polygraphy was doing what we could do, a low-cost work. So basically, we are running by the numbers, going to see what the official source says about this, and this is the whole news. And Maldita, that's the reason why I try to not only look into that, but also trying to talk with people and see if the numbers, there is some truth behind the numbers, and that's the main difference that we notice, but only relation to climate change, okay? Not all the topics, and we cannot
They
say
use
that.
the report published by the institutions to as authority of information.
Yes.
It's good to see that some more conversations are coming up, but we really need to finish our session. Thank you all for being here with us, and we will be back at noon, I think, at noon, okay? See you.
Temos Faremos agora uma pausa de 15 minutos e quando voltarmos vamos conhecer os projetos de 3 investigadores, 2 da Universidade de Coimbra e 1 da Universidade do Porto, que ainda que adotem e explorem temas diferentes, procuram sempre perceber a influência dos média no espaço público. Obrigada por ter estado connosco até agora, fique desse lado porque nós voltamos em breve.